So when it comes to things that keep me up, it usually starts, like most things, with a piece of media or literature. The media or literature in question this time, it seems, is a little known film called Okay, so it's not that little known. Point being, one of the cornerstones of Star Wars and literally every other sci-fi story is the technology. Sometimes it's set in the distant future, sometimes it's set in the not too distant future. Other times, as is the case with Star Wars, it's just not made explicitly clear what's up. It's a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, and let's just leave it at that. The focus here is the droids and the other marvelous technological advances that have been achieved. And no, this video isn't about Star Wars or the droids, it's just a clumsy jumping off point that made me think, like, what is anyone fighting over? Like, what is anyone even fighting over? Like, I get the whole story is just a vehicle to engage viewers with a tale of good and evil, and in more recent times, the bizarrely nebulous nature of both those constructs in a cyclical historical context. Unless, spoiler alert, you decided, fuck all that, Rise of Skywalker backpedaled so hard you'd think their legs were disjointed. P.S. Thanks Space Jesus for the Mandalorian. But seriously, with the absolutely massive technological innovations, even on the most remote of worlds, how is there still conflict in this universe? So far, they presented us with a galaxy that's so full of droids able to repair ships, teach, construct buildings, treat what in this galaxy would be a life-ending wound. They have clearly mastered spaceflight and even extra-dimensional travel. Typically, conflict is spurred by control of resources or ethnic and religious differences. See Jedi v Mandalore, or Jedi v Sith, or Jedi v Yuuzhan Vong, or Jedi v Trade Federation, or Jedi v Jedi. Are the Jedi the assholes? But in a galaxy where all labor could be delegated to a robotic subclass, and all individuals could be free to pursue their own happiness, automation is a pretty contentious topic that understandably elicits strong reactions from anyone with a job, really. 1946's automobile industry is where the term automation was coined by engineering manager D.S. Harder. Gonna just let that hang in the air for a minute. At the Ford Motor Company. I find in conversation the term itself is interpreted to mean different things. Usually the interpretation falls along economic and political lines, which is fucking bizarre because the more I looked into it, the more it seemed like really anyone who isn't already independently wealthy should at least be somewhat concerned. And then the more I looked into it, I realized most folks aren't exactly stoked about the idea to begin with. First, I looked at charts from the Pew Research Center that talks about public perceptions about automation. These are not reflections of reality, just how the general public is feeling. Most seem to believe that automation won't affect their job personally. I assume because most people feel they know the intricacies of their job and they know all the small tasks that might be difficult to automate, and some tasks require abstract thought, which machines are notoriously bad at. But there is a general idea that there will be an overall negative impact on the general population as far as employment goes. That's not simply to imply that folks believe automation to be bad. Nearly everyone can see the positive benefits of freeing up huge sectors of society to achieve more education or whatever it is that you've been putting off for weeks upon weeks. I don't know, maybe like starting an anxiety YouTube channel? Anywho, so what's the big deal? Where's the disconnect and where is my anxiety coming from? Well, during the 1800s and 1900s, automation had a massive effect on the farming industry. The American government expanded access to public schools. Following the World War II, the GI Bill made college accessible to nearly 7 million veterans. Unless you were black, but that is a long and tragic story for another day. My point is America at some point understood the need to invest in education within its population, and even more specifically to invest in the retraining and transitioning of workers from point A to point B. In the past few decades, the United States has spent less than 0.1% of its GDP on active labor market programs, or in the words of senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, Mark Muro, the real automation problem isn't so much a robot apocalypse, it is business as usual of people needing to get retraining and they can't really get it in an accessible, efficient, or well-informed data-driven way. Data-driven? Come on, Mark. Okay, easy peasy. Let the government take care of it. Shit, I'm not gonna lie, this is the actual part that keeps me up. So much of the American dream and ideology relies on having an effective government that operates in good faith and in the best interest of the people who have given them our consent to govern. While I personally question just how much actual consent or ability to dissent we as individuals have, I think it's a hard sell to suggest that we can depend on our government to do the right thing. I don't know if it's because I'm black or because I have a pulse, but I sort of expect the government to act in a way that benefits wealthy ruling class at the expense of the rest of America, going directly against against that whole best interest thing. The HEROES Act, a proposed bill in Congress, would actually double the funding to help dislocated workers and youth programs. In 2018, these programs had around $2 billion to budget. That's actually rather pathetic considering what most other developed countries spend on job and unemployment programs, and considering the unprecedented times we're living in, we should at least spend as much as those other nations, which for America would be around $89 billion, to give you an idea of how amazingly underfunded this aspect of education and job training is. So do I believe we will see these selfish, greedy ghouls make a 180 after 50-odd years of dismantling and underfunding the American education system to the disadvantage of literal children in order to help out adult people who, at best, are just larger, less adorable versions of those children they consciously chose to disadvantage? No, I do not think so. It's not too hard to see the appeal for corporations and business owners with the means to switch over to automation. You don't have to deal with any of the messy stuff that comes with having human employees, and even better, you can't be accused of human rights abuses for outsourcing your labor needs to countries with even fewer labor laws than the United States because you only employ robots. So why is everyone so afraid of the coming robo-job-apocalypse, or robocalypse? Well, there are some real concerns, most of which I already mentioned, but the main ingredient in this strange yet familiar question of public opinion comes down to, I mean, honestly, a lot of headlines go for the most hyperbolic titles. This automation problem is years, decades off from having shit. And so came the year of our Lord,
Satan,
2020, proving that asshole Murphy was a little too accurate for my money. Suddenly the world was on fire and simultaneously sinking into the sea at the exact same time. So what could possibly have been the cherry on the cake of the years that we bookmarked in history as Civil Rights Movement 2 we done goofed? How about a global pandemic out of nowhere? Except not really out of nowhere. A lot of scientists and climatologists have been warning of these exact events would start occurring, including the appearance of widespread disease due to climate change. Even still, no one saw this coming exactly. Pre-pandemic levels of unemployment were, well, they were what they were. But now, shit, we done goofed. So it's obvious that a lot of people have lost their jobs, and a lot of those jobs, some say have, may never return, and automation is becoming even more spoken of. So a lot of the headlines and subsequent articles I saw regarding the threat of automation kept quoting from a specific study from 2013 by two economic mad lads, Michael A. Osborne and Carl Benedict Frey. Say what you want, those are great names. The future of employment. How susceptible are jobs to computerization? In this study that has been cited over 5,000, Jesus, that is a lot. 5,000 times. Wow, that's a lot. Frey and Osborne put forth that 47% of all US jobs are susceptible to some form of automation. Moreover, similar studies produce similar results in other countries using Ozzy and Frey's methodology. Case closed. We're fucked. Time to go to Mars. I mean, I think for a lot of reasons we're screwed, but mostly not because of this. That study that keeps getting referenced is heavily criticized by the economic and scientific community, with some decrying the lack of evidence, the lack of transparency, and the all-around lack of a credible methodology. Basically, if the methodology used to come to these conclusions is flawed and unexamined, then the conclusions themselves must be flawed and unexamined. To that point, the OECD, or Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, an international economic intergovernmental body that helps with coordinating policy and problem solving across 37 nations, through their own studies, found only 9% of jobs across its member states were at risk of automation. So what does it all mean? I have no idea. A lot of this is from people far smarter than me. And at the core of it, I think that uncertainty is the source of mine and many other people's anxiety. The idea that there is a looming issue, a problem that will have large, far-reaching consequences for many generations, a problem that has clear steps that we can take to fix or at least mitigate the issue. The uncertainty and fear of knowing that your government has a really bad track record of not giving a shit about anyone with less than 10 digits in their bank account. To answer my earlier thought, with everything that's happening, it's worth considering that in Star Wars, a universe with far superior technology to ours, there is still poverty. In almost all of the previous films I mentioned, there is poverty, because even in our most fantastic visions of the future, we still usually default to a dichotomy of have and have not. A world where robots can do literally anything doesn't equal immediate utopia or equity. Don't believe the rich will shepherd us wisely into a post-labor future. We're already on a timeline where many agree that basic universal income is the best way to bridge the racial wealth gap, as well as the ever-widening gap between wealthy and poor. In a world where basic needs are met, you have safety and stability. The conflict this time isn't over which group of space wizards has the bestest robes. It's over who controls the access to basic necessities to survive. It's against the haves and have-nots. If you can't afford a robot now, why would you believe you'd be given one? Why believe those in power would suddenly give up the system that put them in power? Because it no longer serves the greater purpose it was created for? I don't know. If anyone could put these concerns to ease, it would be much appreciated. You can do so down in the comments. So, vote in your local election, folks. Nighty night.